Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we are taking a look at Mercury retrograde in the sign of Capricorn through all 12 signs. So this is a further exploration of Mercury's retrograde in Capricorn. Yesterday we did a kind of 20,000 foot view of the entire cycle and all of the interesting points that make this a really unique Mercury retrograde cycle. Today we're going to try to put some skin on it by looking at Mercury's retrograde through Capricorn, back into Sag, and then back into Cap through direct motion through the 12 signs. So these are horoscopes for all 12 signs that'll look at the whole sign house of Cap and Sag in your charts, try to give you some more context and embodied specific topics that are likely to be active through the retrograde in the weeks ahead. So before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, share your comments and reflections. We really appreciate it when you guys do that. And you can find a transcript of today's talk on the website, nightlightastrology.com. You guys also know that we are on our way to trying to rally the support of 1,777 backers by New Year's Eve. As of the time that I'm recording this intro, we have 507 backers who have turned out and pledged to support the channel. We deeply appreciate you. From me and the 11 staffers that we have that make this possible, thank you. Thank you for your support. We still need, by New Year's Eve, 1,270 backers to go. Frankly, we are a little behind the pace that we've had the past couple of years. Every year is different, but we really need your support if we're going to make our goal. And I've spent time at length talking about all the unique things the Kickstarter supports, so I won't labor that. But I've been trying to take some time every day to helping people understand what the goals are, what the vision is, what my values are, so that you understand more about the Kickstarter and why I think it's worth supporting. You can find a link at the top of the comment section, pinned to the top, if you'd like to click over and donate today. And you can also find it in the description of the video. 3 things I want to share today have to do with those things that I've learned personally as a content creator in the past year. These are my personal spiritual, revelations, insights, the ways in which I see myself having grown as a person, which I think has had a direct impact on the quality of the content that I've made. Dare I say, I think the content has gotten better. Dare I say, I think it gets a little bit better over time every year, but it goes through the ups and downs of being, I'm a human who's learning and growing just like everybody else. And the way that the filter through which the content comes is often, my own work, my own inner process, my shadows, and so forth. I want to share with you guys 3 things that I feel comfortable sharing that I have learned personally in the past year that I think have made for better content. And I also want to share with you that I'm committed to continuing to do my own personal work in the year ahead to make sure that I want people to know that they're listening to someone who cares that the content get better, because the quality of my heart, my soul, and my spiritual life is aimed at getting better. Better might not even be the right word. Growth, insight, reflection, deepening, soulfulness, whatever. I just want to keep learning and let that learning be an extension of, improved content for all of you. So anyway, 3 things I learned personally in the past year. Number 1, I am religious, but not religious. You guys may know that about a year ago, I left a religious tradition that I was a part of. I had an initiated name that was acyuta-bhava, and that was a really, really huge and one of the most difficult choices of my life, to leave that religious tradition and to come back to my given birth name of Adam, which was just one part, was just the outer token really of a much deeper choice that had to do with recognizing that while I have a religious attitude toward life, but I am not inherently a religious person insofar as, I'm not, what I recognize about myself is that getting identified with a religious order or sect with vows and that level of commitment is not right for me. And it might be my Capricorn moon in the 9th house, my own shadows growing up as a preacher's kid in the church, but I had to come to the realization that I have a religious attitude toward life. There was a wonderful book I read this past year. It really changed my life. It was called Religious But Not Religious: Living the Symbolic Life. And it was by a Jungian psychologist named Jason Smith. You can find that book on Amazon. I highly recommended it. I highly recommend it. And I did recommend it throughout the year. What I learned from reading that book and being in my own therapy process and coming to that really difficult crossroads of having to leave a religious tradition was that a religious attitude. Well, if you think about the word religion, it just means to reconnect. It's something that's been severed or cut off. And there's a way in which I experience life, and I think the way that a lot of people do, as seeking out connection with the divine. You might call it seeking a connection with the universe or with spirit or with God or the gods or Shakti or whatever you want to call it. But it's been a part of my life since I was a little boy growing up in the church to seek out and find meaning through religious participation. And what I discovered in the past year was that I could do that every single day. I could live that kind of life without feeling like there was anything wrong with not belonging to a religion. Like there was always a pressure that I felt after sort of leaving the Christian fold of like, well, I have to find what's the new community or what's the right community if this one isn't it. And I know for some people, this is like, dude, why are you even struggling with this? I've been sort of religious, but not religious my whole life. But for me, it was a struggle, feeling like I needed to be a part of a religious tradition. Otherwise, there was something wrong about living a life without a specific religious affiliation. That was really, really hard for me. But making that choice and making that shift was one of the best things I've ever done. I don't feel any less religious in attitude. What I mean that is I take a devotional, spiritual approach to my astrology, to my prayer life, to learning about spiritual things, to being conscious, to being open to and respectful of world religions. But I'm religious, but not religious. I think that had a profound impact on the quality of the content in the past year, because I think I became more open-minded. I think there was a closed-minded, more somewhat narrow and afraid piece of me that decided that everything was okay. I don't know how else to put it, but yeah, so that was a huge lesson. I think it made for better content. I can't quantify exactly how, but I just felt lighter and easier since then. Number 2, I learned that the body is sacred. I went through a profound physical transformation. I've talked about that in other videos. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but one of the reasons that I really had a hard time seeking out the help I needed with diet, with exercise, with weightlifting, with sleep, with hormonal health, with all sorts of stuff was because coupled with that kind of, I must find a religion, like, coupled with this kind of, I don't know, a fear was also a kind of programming that I wasn't super aware of. Like I was into yoga. We owned a yoga studio. I'm a Taurus rising. I consider myself a pretty sensual person, like an artistic. I went to art school, but there was something in me that probably from my Christian upbringing and ancestral karma or something, just really didn't think that the body was that like earth and below was as sacred as above. One of the things that happened in the past year was I became physically embodied in a way that I never have before. My hormonal health changed dramatically because I sought out help that I was afraid to seek out because I thought there was something wrong with seeking out a transformation of body and health. When I prioritized that, everything shifted, and far from what I thought it would do, which was like, somehow it would invalidate my spirituality to focus on the bodily realm. I mean, it was new and there were some adjustments. Getting into my body came with like, I don't know, some ego adjustments at times for sure. But more than anything, what it did was it just made me realize that the immanent worldly material energy is as beautiful and sacred as the transcendent or transcendental. And there was a split in me that I wouldn't have thought that it was there, but it was. And that shift for me, I think, has greatly improved the quality of the content. That shift is still happening. It's not like it happens. It's like layers of an onion, But I notice that now in me, that I have more appreciation for the worldly, the feminine, the embodied, the sensual. And I think it's made for better content in the past year. At least I feel better about the content I'm making. And then finally, relationships and creativity are nutritional. In the past year, you see, I'll just be honest. I have stayed so busy with this work, with the content creation for 10 years, that I didn't think that I would have time to write a book again. This year, by prioritizing the Grateful Dead and dancing and doing fun things with my wife, which I've been so busy with work and kids for so many years, Uranus hit my natal Venus, and I was like, all right, I feel so overworked that I need to return to like, I need to spend more time like dating my wife because I love her and we weren't like there wasn't a problem, but there was also not the same like joy and fun and creativity that we had before kids came. And it just felt like I was on the hamster wheel of like kids and duties and work all the time. And somehow I realized that it's really, really important to step off that hamster wheel, that like conveyor belt, and like go dancing with my wife, go to a Grateful Dead show, you know, smoke a joint for the first time in 6 years. That's honest. But that happened and it was good. It was fantastic. So at the Grateful Dead show, by the way, which was amazing. So sorry, that was probably TMI. I also got back into my guitar and I also started writing a book again. And I did those things. I made myself do those things because I had to put faith in the idea that taking care of myself creatively is a kind of nutrition that spills over into everything else. And I believe that those things have made for better content this past year. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for supporting my staff. Thank you for supporting the vision of Nightlight. Thank you for supporting everything that we do and being so generous as you've watched me grow. You've been forgiving and kind and supportive as I've grown as a human and as a content creator. And I just can't tell you how much I appreciate that. So on that note, I hope you will really enjoy today's talk on Mercury retrograde and some horoscopes. Don't forget to support the Kickstarter if you haven't yet. We would really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll see you again tomorrow. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. We are looking at Mercury retrograde in the sign of Capricorn, backing into Sagittarius, going back into Capricorn. So we're going to look at the pair of those two houses in all of our horoscopes today. I want to go over the timeline first, and then we'll get into it for all 12 signs. And what I'm going to be doing is a little bit more like a mini horoscope. So I'm going to be mentioning things in the topics that I think might be active and how the two houses topically might pair together. And we'll just be kind of running through each sign as a way of giving you some deeper context for the retrograde that we talked about yesterday. So I'm going to share my screen now, and here it is. All right, so if I can just bring up my Epic pen. Where are you, Epic pen? There we go. So here is Mercury retrograde as of Thursday, December 14th. Now, let's watch as this unfolds. We're going to go week at a time. So we can see it's backed into Sag. This is by late December. And then we see it stationing and turning direct on January 1st. But we want to bring it all the way back up to 8 degrees because, as we discussed in yesterday's video on Mercury retrograde, it's really doing some pretty amazing things all the way up until it returns to the degree at which it's stationed and turned retrograde, which takes us to about January 20th. So we're thinking of this as a period now. All of the horoscopes we do today, you could think of as going from about December 13th, 14th, through about January 20th, 21st. Okay, so that being said, let us get now to the retrograde. Here you can see it placed there in Capricorn. And what do we want to say for each of the 12 signs? We'll start with Aries, and we're going to notice the pairing of houses, 10 and 9. You think about the 10th house and you think about career. You think about activities in the world that engage you with the world. So if you're retired, how are you engaging with the world? What kind of activities are defining or guiding your interaction with the world? If you're a kid, it's the same thing. In midlife, we tend to think about those activities that engage us with the greater society in which we live as occupational. But keep that in mind, that more broadly speaking, it has to do with those things we do, we practice, we do them consistently that engage us with the world. There is some kind of change or reorientation or shift or delay or reversal taking place in this area right now. And it's going to also dip into the house of our higher beliefs, our moral, spiritual, or philosophical compass, if you're an Aries or Aries rising. Which means that we're talking about a reorientation around worldly activities that coincides with some shifting or amplifying or reflecting on the nature of your beliefs and your convictions. So as your activities in the world shift, your beliefs shift. As your beliefs shift, your career shifts, things like that. And that is the best
Just think of those two houses as working together in this process that's taking place between now and about January 20th. We know that the end of the process will also engage as the Sun and Pluto are entering your 11th house. So the final result of all of this might be that there is a very different kind of social engagement happening in terms of like the group, the house of groups, friends, allies, and so forth. A really interesting set of themes to consider. But the main ones, again, that I would look at are going to be the Cap and Sag themes in the 10th and 9th house: beliefs, higher learning, religion, or spiritual or moral or philosophical orientation, and changes happening in both that area and the area of our vocation or worldly endeavors, practices, habits, routines, and so forth. The things that engage us out in the world. All right, let's move ahead to Taurus rising. With Taurus rising, we find the interaction between the 9th and the 8th. I think it's always a little bit easier when you have the two signs, if you're looking at a transition like this in the same angular triad, like 9, 10, and 11, as opposed to 9 and 8, which are a part of the same angular triad. But if you don't know about triads, don't worry about that for another time. Regardless, we see a shifting in terms of beliefs and convictions, morally, again, philosophically or spiritually, religiously, something about learning and education going through a transformation, as we also see a shift around people's resources, money, investments, the way in which others give or withhold, share or demand something of you. So the reciprocal nature of those things that come out of the 8th house are being paired around the spiritual and philosophical changes happening in the 9th. There is some connection between the soul contracts you have, money, debts, and shared assets or resources, and the realm of beliefs, religion, philosophy, higher education, and so forth. Really fascinating to pair those things together, because it suggests an exploration of relational values and exchanges alongside of political, moral, philosophical, or spiritual outlooks. Now, for Geminis, we see the retrograde coming through the 8th house being paired in the 8th and the 7th. So it retrogrades into the 7th, comes back into the 8th. Now, you could also say that the back and forth between the two is because they're in the same angular triad. We're talking about changes in relationships related to the assets or resources of partners or people we are in relationships with. It has to do with the debts and responsibilities that others have to us or that we have to others, the crosses we bear in the relationships we have, the duties, responsibilities, and obligations of a spouse or partner, or that we have to a spouse or partner, or that they have to us in business, in love, a roommate, any kind of examination of our exchanges of emotion, energy, finance, resource in relationships with other people, alongside of an exploration of relationships themselves. So changes in relationships along with the change of values, services, duties, and obligations in relationships. Geminis are looking at that at a pretty deep level. We go forward to Cancer, and we see the pairing alongside the 7th and 6th house axis. So again, same angular triad. This would mean that the topics are paired together in a more immediate and obvious way. For example, we have changes in relationships in Mercury's retrograde in the 7th house, paired alongside of sacrifice, work, labor, and conflict in the 6th house. So for example, when you're looking at changes in relationships and they force you to have to sacrifice or work or, face and work through adversity, hardships, or conflict, that's a Mercury retrograde going from 7 to 6 back to 7. Relationship changes are imminent, and they will require work, sacrifice, service, hard work, and the overcoming of adversity or conflict. Or even you could see something like the need to persevere as a way of overcoming and working through something, not just in a relationship, but something that a partner is dealing with. So you can also see this as something reflected in the life of a close partner or friend or lover. Now, go forward to, let's see here. Yes. Okay. So we go to Leo on the ascendant, and we have the pairing of the 6th and 5th houses. The connection between these two houses, again, is we don't have them in the same angular triad. However, the 5th house was called the place of good fortune, the 6th, the place of misfortune. That's interesting because when Mercury retrograde starts off in the 6th house, you think about things breaking down, or you think about challenges that have to be overcome through a kind of reassessing how you're utilizing resources, or whether a plan or a current way of doing something is going to get the job done, or whether it's just going to create more problems. So you're really looking at the like almost like taking problematic things and breaking them down in order to understand and solve them. And as a part of a Mercury retrograde in the 6th house, like Mercury retrograde in the 6th house is frequently associated with like disassembling things and putting them back together. It's a Mercury retrograde in the 6th kind of theme. When it dips back into the 5th house, you also think about creativity, self-expression, joy, happiness, good fortune, romance. And so it almost seems like a process of breakdown or difficulty is moving into a space of ease, joy, creativity, and saying, hey, there's an easier way of doing things. There's actually a way that you can move from a kind of hardworking, dutiful, solve problems, practical Capricornian space into a more creative and less inhibited Sagittarian space. And yet at the end of the day, you carry that Sagittarian energy back into Capricorn, where then hopefully a different way of approaching problems has presented itself, maybe a freer, looser, easier way of doing things. That's the way I would look at this, just sort of trying to pick up a really good general storyline that a lot of people will probably see. All right, let's go forward to Virgo. With Virgo, we see the pairing of the 5th and 4th houses. Now we're in the same angular triad again of 5, 4, and 3. And here we have the Mercury retrograde in the 5th going down into the 4th and coming back into the 5th. For example, you might see a connection here between creativity and self-expression, things that you're working on, things that are requiring a lot of sacrifice and hard work, but that are sort of creatively rewarding. And there's almost like you think about Capricorn in the 5th house as like a creative cross to bear. It's like the weight of a book you're writing or an album you're creating. It's beautiful, but it's like, wow, is it a lot of work? And there's something about redirecting or revising or reconsidering or kind of going in a different direction, maybe creatively, and kind of reconsidering what it means for something to be happy or beautiful or fun. And then the exploration takes you into the realm of home and family. It takes you into the realm of your living environment and rest, relaxation, release from the world. It's almost as though Virgos are getting a creative break and saying, look, you can't make, even creative things can find a way of becoming stressful. So do you have a space that you can go into that's truly more relaxed and liberating? And if not, if you feel like you always have to be productive, even on a creative level, which is supposed to be about joy and happiness, where does that come from? Does it have roots in anything unconscious or ancestral or in the family? What can you do to loosen up your creative life? And what kind of inspiration can you bring forth if you take enough time to rest that can make the creative crosses that you bear, just easier or lighter somehow? So a lot of loosening and lightening around this axis, as far as I can tell. Then when we have Libra rising, we get the axis of houses 4 and 3. And here I think a lot about the connection between home, family, and living environment and the harder or more difficult karma that you bear around your ancestry or your parents. There's changes around the roots, things that are ready to be let go of or reordered or revisioned somehow, maybe in your living environment, again, maybe around where you live or what the home space looks or feels like, but also relationships in the family, things from the past coming back up. And then There's also, again, like if there's a weightiness around the Cap energy in the fourth house of home and family, there's a lighter, more expansive quality in the third house that's coming through. How can I change my mind? How can my mindset be lighter, which creates less of a burden at the roots? It's sort of like saying, I'm not responsible for every last thing that's come through my life or my family, my home or my place of origin. I can just set some of it down. I don't have to carry all of it. Again, almost like around this axis, I feel like the transition from Cap to Sag and back to Cap is very much loosening or lightening of creative energies, of ancestral karma, of the mind, moods, and emotion. There's a sense of like just letting yourself off the hook and taking it easier. This is also about fundamental changes happening around. Again, anything like your lease could change with your landlord, or you could find yourself moving to a different neighborhood. So very practical changes that could happen around home, family, and living environment as well for Libras. Let's go to Scorpios. So with Scorpios, we start shifting again, and we have houses 2 and 3. And this is interesting because we're talking about changes that have to be made, especially with Mercury in the third house, to our mind. Our mind in, almost think about like a weightiness and like your mind being occupied with things that are very serious. And then as Mercury moves into the second house and goes into Sag, a Jupiter ruled sign, it's almost like there's an invitation to develop some skills or resources that free you up, that allow for more space, freedom, creativity, flow. And then you go back to work, you go back to the burdens of the world, but you have new skills that you develop, new excitement, new enthusiasm. It makes the load lighter to carry. But I think a lot of this has to do with what you have, what you're in possession of, what you can develop or cultivate as skills or resources that can lighten the mood, lighten the mind, lighten the load you're carrying mentally. There's a close connection here between the environment of the mind and the environment of money and resources, and what you have or are in possession of, what skills you have, or which ones you want to develop. And again, how that could contribute to some kind of fundamentally different or lighter or easier way of being, like mentally or intellectually or something like that. All right, so we go forward to Sag rising, and now we have an angular triad connecting again. And this time we have the first and second houses. And I think about this process in terms of, again, assets, money, resources, a change in how you allocate or use or spend time, money, energy, resources overall. So a change of financial approach, a change in business, some change in terms of who or what you can rely on as an asset or resource, and some revisions that are happening there. But this revision is coinciding with a change to your sense of who you are, which is implied by Mercury retrograding into your first house. There's a fundamental change in how you see yourself, how you communicate yourself, how you want to be seen, how you treat your body, or what your mind or body looks like. And it's connected very intimately to some kind of change around money or resources. And again, the resources don't have to be financial, they can be. So resource changes alongside of identity changes. Those seem to be the most common themes for this pairing of houses in the retrograde. If you go forward to Capricorn, now we have the 1st and 12th houses. And, interestingly, now we have identity again, but this time we have a space that is deeply unconscious. So we're talking about a different way of thinking about ourselves, but it emerges through contact with unconscious material. Could be shadows, should be bad habits undermining people or thoughts or behaviors or situations that undermine us. But we are going to be realizing, if you're a Capricorn, you're going to be realizing something really important about who you are, the direction you want to take in your life, how you think about yourself, how you communicate yourself to other people. And it's going to happen because there's an opportunity, I should say, to look into a kind of blind spot or a shadow spot as Mercury retrogrades into the 12th, and then it comes back into your awareness as it comes into the 1st. So this is shadow work and integration of a more conscious identity. It's like it's very psychologically shifting through an exploration of the unconscious for Capricorns. Now we go to Aquarius and we get the 12th and the 11th, which means we have the same kind of unconscious material being visited for Aquarians, but it's tapping that unconscious exploration is being brought to bear on the house of friends, groups, allies, communities. And so the unconscious material that's showing itself is directly impacting your social network or the people that are like allies or friends in your life. So a really interesting exploration. You could very easily realize through this retrograde who your friends are and who they aren't, or you could start to see the shadows or blind spots of a group or of people that you consider friends. And maybe it's forgivable, maybe it's just good to be aware of. Maybe it's so powerful that you feel like you need to shift or change your priorities socially. Those are the kinds of things that I could see coming up for Aquarians. All right, if we move forward to Pisces, we then look at last at the 10th and 11th houses. And so groups, communities, friends, allies connecting with changes around career or social, societal participation. What kinds of activities, worldly activities, are you revising, shifting, or changing in correspondence with changes among friends, allies, groups, networks of people, and so forth? Change in friends, change in people that act as like allies for your goals and ambitions. There's changes happening in that house alongside of changes happening in the professional house or the house that engages us in the world. So, for example, some of your goals, if you're in retirement, some of your goals might have to do with the kinds of people and activities that you like to do now that you're retired. This could bring about changes in the kind of people you hang out with, as well as the kind of activities that you enjoy or how you enjoy them or how you do the things that you do, or who and where you do them, or who you do them with and where you do them, things like that. So you can have an imagination about this if you're like in more of a retirement phase of life. For children, this is also about shaping your ambitions and shaping the kinds of people that are going to be, rightly aligned for who you're becoming and who you want to become. And that happens in the lives of even young children. So you think about those things to help. Anyway, this has been just a kind of brief breakdown of the combination. Listen, the possibility I think exists that the Capricorn house will be much more important than the Sag house. The reason for that is that the Cap house is where it starts, is where it ends, and it does so in trines with Jupiter. So if you were listening to this and you had a harder time hearing the two houses working together, then just focus on the Capricorn house by whole sign. And you think, like in the case of, let's see. So in the case of Aries, that's your career. In the case of Taurus, that's the place of religion and spirituality or education, schools, stuff like that. For Geminis, that's the 8th house of your, kind of contractual obligations to other people and those that they have to you. If you are a Cancer, this has to do with marriage and relationships. If you're a Leo, it has to do with the sacrifices, the hard work, the adversity, and the sort of perseverance required to overcome something. If it's the 5th house, which is Virgo, then it's creativity and joy. And if it's the 4th house is Libra, then you're looking at home and family. And again, I'll just repeat this for all the signs. So Scorpio, the 3rd house, you think of your mind and the mental, emotional environment. If it's Sagittarius, you think about the 2nd house, money and resources. If it's Cap, you think about identity. If it's Aquarius, you think about blind spots and unconscious material. And if it's Pisces, then you're thinking about groups, community, friends, and allies as the main source of change, reflection, revision that the retrograde indicates. So I just went through those again really quickly because, again, like I said, I think that for a lot of people, the Cap area might be the one that pops the most. But the two together hopefully gives you some insight into how the two houses might be working in cahoots over the next weeks from now until about January 20th. Anyway, I hope that this was useful alongside of our general exploration of the archetypal themes of the retrograde we did yesterday. I hope this gives you some good things to think about. This weekend, we're going to have bonus content. I think we'll probably be running the moon in Gemini on Saturday as the Planets in Profile series continues, throwing out a little bit extra to keep the wheels turning on the Kickstarter, which reminds me, don't forget, we are en route to 1,777 backers by New Year's Eve. We have a long way to go. We really need your help. If you have time to spare, head on over to the Kickstarter, pitch in if you can. We really appreciate it. The link is at the top of the comment section, pinned to the top or in the description of the video. Pick up 50% off, 75%, 50% off my classes. If you bundle them together, the savings goes up. Or my book, or the readings that we do, or some of the other classes we offer, all on sale there. We We really appreciate your help. And yeah, thank you so much to everyone who's already donated. Okay, on that note, I hope you guys are having a good day, and we will see you again tomorrow.